I'm Jackie, the Juicy Chef, and welcome to A Drink and a Natter. And today I'm with my good friend, Debra Taylor, also known as the Wine Lady Debra. She's Jamaica's foremost wine expert, and her journey has been so amazing, and she's taken us along on the ride with her. She continues to educate us, to share with us. Debs, welcome to my gazebo. We're in Kingston, Jamaica. It's sunny.
Yes.
It's humid right now, guys. The sun is rising over the blue mountains behind us. We hear the birds chirping, some lawnmowers going on from my neighbors behind us.
And it's beautiful. It's so nice to be outside.
Yes,
Thank
definitely. We're so blessed when we think of our dear friends and family in the north right
That's
now,
right.
putting on layers of clothes,
Yes.
and we're still peeling off
That's
layers
right.
of clothes.
That's right. We sure are. So you asked about, why people should not be, I don't know, afraid of wines,
Yeah.
or think of it as a great mystery. And one should, because wine is life, wine is fun, wine is art, and wine is beautiful. And it really is pretty simple. I mean, the basic thing about wine is that you taste a wine, you like it, drink it. You taste a wine, you don't like it, you don't have to drink it.
Right.
Okay, so you don't have to feel pressured to like it because everybody else likes it.
I'm so happy you said that, because taste really is subjective. And I've had people come to me and say, boy, Jackie, I was around so and so and so and so, but they're raving about this wine. Like, I had a friend, she hates champagne.
Yes.
She said, it gives me a headache. I don't see what the big deal is about. She's like, I actually prefer Prosecco to
Yes.
champagne.
Yes.
And could you just break down to our listeners about the differences, the sparkling wine world, or why certain things are called the way because of region,
Of
etc.?
course.
Could you share that with us?
Sure. So champagne has to come from the region Champagne in France. There's this beautiful town about 90 miles north of Paris, or north somewhere up there. And, it's this place that is actually called Champagne. And it has, different, I guess you'd call them towns within that, call it principality. And if the wine doesn't come from that region, then it cannot be called champagne. So basically, all champagne is sparkling wine, but
Right.
not all sparkling wine is
I
champagne.
love that.
And it's because if it doesn't come from that region in France, then it can't be called champagne. So in France, they do make other sparkling wines in other regions, but they can't be called champagne. Champagne is a limited, a specified region of, I've forgotten the square footage of it or the hectares of it, but because of the size of it, and because of the controlled yields that they're allowed to produce per hectare, they limit. It's limited. It's a limited
Right.
amount, and hence between that, the aging process, it goes through a double fermentation process. It spends a lot of time in bottle, etc. Because of those things, it then demands the kind of price that it demands. So it is in high demand. It is kind of known as, or in the past, I guess maybe over the last 5 years, things have changed somewhat, and they've kind of gotten a bit of a run for their money from
Definitely.
other regions,
Right.
because the Spanish do make a beautiful sparkling
Yes,
wine
love it.
called cava.
Yes.
And in many instances they do use the same method of production, but they just cannot call it
right.
correct. And then out of Italy, the one that has just blown everyone away is Prosecco.
Yeah, that's
And
the end drink.
It
right
is
now.
the
Yes.
in drink. Most of their production is not as involved as champagne production. So, hence you're able to get it at some really competitive prices. Plus, they're not defined by such a limited area, so they're able to produce more. But you find that it's a lot more approachable. I mean, champagne, because of the processes, develops these very complex flavors. So, they tend to be kind of yeasty, bready, biscuity, toasty, nutty, which most people aren't able to I won't say appreciate, because you can appreciate it, but most people are not able to come to terms with. And in a light sparkling wine, you want something kind of fruity. So you want these apple, peachy kind of peary notes.
Right. And
And
I want to
some
cut
others.
you right there too when you said about apple and peachy notes. Remember recently we had a discussion about wine being described by culture.
Yes.
And all our lives, wine has been described by European terms and European fruits and vegetables, and you talk about like barnyard smells and oak, and we grow mahogany and
Yes.
cedar, and
Yes.
how, and our fruit. Like the other day, for example, I was filming some cocktail videos with my friend Kino, and I introduced him to elderflower for the first
Yes.
time, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, this reminds me kind of like jackfruit and peach combined."
Yes.
And like his use of the word jackfruit. And are there wines that you could specify in our terms, in our food terms, our language? In terms of just something, there a wine that reminisces of mango, and I've heard pineapple, I must say.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
any other type of
All
local
wines.
fruits? Yes.
All wines can be described in terms of the fruits that are available in our region.
Okay.
So we have to understand that these wine descriptions have been around for hundreds of years.
Definitely.
And the winemakers have dedicated time and pretty much their life to describing their wines.
Right.
And so their frame of reference is what they have available. We are new to this. So regionally it's actually something that we have talked about here, but just have never had the time to line up all our tamarind, our guava, our passion, all our local fruits and veg and flowers, our herbs and spices, and then assign them, because there are similarities, there are crossovers, and there are similarities.
Well, I do believe you are the person
I am.
to do
Can
this.
someone fund me?
Yes,
Can
yes.
I
All of
wanna
us,
do
come
it.
on. Let's
Let's get
invest
this
in
done.
Deborah. Let's get, because I've noticed a shift in the Caribbean, our drinking patterns. For example, we are rum and beer territory. Now I see the rise of wine. Do you think tourism has contributed to that, or the fact that we travel a lot? People have this kind of stereotype that we don't travel. Caribbean people, we travel a lot. We're everywhere in the world. And do you think that could be the contributing factor for wine culture in the Caribbean now?
I think it's a combination. I strongly believe that travel has played a really important role, because although it's played a huge role, but let's remember that it's really a small subset of us that do travel.
That's true.
But we are influencers.
Yes.
Okay. So we travel, and then we influence the drinking patterns. Additionally, in the hotels, the workers there are locals, and so they are exposed, and they take a taste, and we train them so they get to taste, and they realize that this is not so bad. And here's the other thing: we're predisposed to fortified wines, because when you look at our Stone's ginger wine, Magnum tonic wine, Red Label wine,
the Christmas cake. I remember seeing
and then there were things before that, like I can't remember if it was like Thunderbird or whatever, but there were these heavy port style tonic wines, Sanatogen, Wincarnis.
Yes.
Okay, so these are all
Blast from
wines.
the past.
I know.
I've heard those names.
I know. And when you think about them, they are. They have the word wine in their name.
Yes.
So we're predisposed to wine. Okay. We're used to this heavy style of port type wine. And so, there's a natural segue into real wine that will happen. And that's one of the things that has made Moscato so popular. Yeah. Because it then now becomes a light sweet white versus this heavy port style red. Definitely. Okay. Yeah. And that has opened up a whole new set of drinkers, because there's something that they actually like. Because the truth is, some of these wines are austere, as in they're kind of tight and unfriendly and steely and dry, and they're not necessarily appealing. And so you really sit there with a glass, and you're going, and you're like, and they're telling you that you smell gooseberry and elderflower and stuff like that, and you're like,
it goes over a lot of people's heads.
Talk about the roses and the jasmine, and tell me about ginger, and tell me about guava.
And I'm so happy you said this, because in terms of wines, we have the old world wines and the new world wines, and in our region, do you find that there's one subset of wines? Like, I find that California is very popular here, Chile, Argentina more so than the old world wines. Are you finding
Indeed.
that? Yeah.
Indeed. Earlier on, it was the European wines that had come in, but it was like, remember Blue Nun?
Oh gosh, yes, German
So
Blue Nun.
you know that
Yeah.
that sold really well
Well,
because it and it is
yes,
from Germany. It was a
yes,
sweet style
yes, yeah.
of Riesling or a blend of
Yeah.
other grapes.
Mhm.
And so old world wines were coming in. You know, the Chateauneuf de Pape. I
Yes.
remember, you know, you look on
Okay.
this and you see Chateauneuf de
The
Pape,
Pape,
Saint-Emilion,
yeah.
and you see all these regions and you're like, and you taste it
Yes.
and you're like, oh my God, what is this?
This, yeah.
Okay, not so appealing. And then it was actually Australia that came in with their bolder styled of wines because you know it's a hotter climate, so you're
Right.
getting riper fruit,
Mhm.
and so you're tasting
That is
more
lovely Shiraz.
fruitiness, correct, that
yeah.
were you know kind of bold and very fruity.
Mhm.
And there is a very thin line between on the palate between ripe fruitiness and it because it almost leans to sweetness.
Right.
So it stimulates the sweet taste bud on the front of your
Right.
tongue. But it's really not sweet. It's just
just
really
really
ripe fruit,
right.
and it envelops your mouth. And so the Australians with their warmer climatic conditions were producing these red wines that were full and appealing on the palate. And then California just knocked it out of the ballpark.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're getting most of our wines
wines
from.
from,
They
yeah.
are the most popular.
And I
It
think
is-
the cost as well. The cost.
Well, the
is it cheaper?
Chileans are the
Okay.
ones that are able to kind of bridge that gap. So, Australia, when they started, they were very, price friendly and still do have very good wines that are easy to drink and affordable. But the Chileans then, they took it and they ran with it and produced, a lot of inexpensive
Right.
wines that we could use, particularly for hotels to use as
Yeah.
they're pouring. And then, but the Californian styles of wines became even more popular because 80% of our visitors, and in those days it was
That's
like
true.
95% of our visitors
Yeah.
were coming from the US.
That's true.
And they
yeah.
wanted to drink their wines.
Right, what they're used to.
What they're
right.
used to.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
and I
Makes
think it's that exposure to those wines that has helped, from top down and bottom up because the
Right.
the staff in the hotels
Hotels,
and
right.
restaurants
Yeah.
would be familiar with these wines. They kind of get to taste them and we're trying to adapt. So
Okay.
we're trying to appreciate and understand what we're
Right.
tasting.
And I'm glad you mentioned that too about styles of wine because of late you're seeing orange wines, biodynamic wines.
Yes.
Do you think we will ever see these wines in Jamaica one day?
So yes, but I believe they're going to be niche
Mhm.
because as they tend to be niche.
Right.
As we move to more sustainability, I believe biodiversity or wines produced under those conditions will gain popularity. More and more of us are becoming vegan,
Right.
pescatarian,
Yeah.
flexitarian. All kinds of niches are appearing. So I believe they will have appeal, but generally speaking, I believe they're
Still
going to be.
niche.
Yeah. I think they're
Okay,
gonna
and I'm
stay
glad we
niche.
brought that up because climate change. And,
Oh my gosh.
with Nyam and Trod, our association with Meatless Monday Global, climate is very important to us. We are a flexitarian website. You brought up flexitarian, so we are 70% plant based, and like both of us are British,
Yeah.
Jamaican. And you see like areas like Kent in the UK
I
now
know.
produces champagne style wines,
Yes.
lovely whites because climate change
Yes.
has England's becoming warmer. You're
Right.
seeing other regions like when I lived in Paris, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Do you remember that time in London where we were in Chinatown? We went to our favorite Vietnamese restaurant, Viet. So Chinatown's in Soho, which is central London. And so we went for this lovely meal with a couple other friends of ours, and Deborah pulls out this Slovenian wine. So can you imagine a Vietnamese meal with Slovenian wines? And I want you to just talk about, there's a whole vast world of wines. When I lived in Paris, I was introduced to Lebanese wine from the Bekaa Valley,
Yes.
Morocco, there's
Yes.
Meknes. And then even when I went to both countries, and I enjoyed that, people don't often think of those countries as being Muslim
Yeah.
and, no alcohol.
Right.
But, in Lebanon has a big Christian community as well. And both countries have a French influence. They were
Yeah.
both colonized by France. And there, India has a
Yes,
wine
they do.
region
We
north
used
of
to bring in an Indian
right,
wine.
yes, and
China is making wine.
China's making wine, Ethiopia's making wine.
Yes.
So could you tell us about this excitement, like in terms of regionality? A mutual friend of ours recently asked if wine could be grown in Jamaica, and you
Yes.
explained why we could really produce
Yes.
wine. So could you explain the geographical indicators
Sure.
of how why certain regions work and other regions don't
Sure.
work?
So, I mean, the world of wine is vast. And, one of the beautiful things about going through countries like Italy and France and Spain is the regionality of their wines. So you go into the Ribera del Duero, or you go into Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and the wines there marry beautifully with the food there. And there are certain grapes that grow better in certain areas than in other areas, and that takes time to develop. But those regions that have been producing wines forever have kind of worked it out.
Right.
You see them experiment with small batches of other grapes, but they know that because of how fickle or how delicate growing grapes is, it suits you to grow what it makes sense to grow.
Right.
Okay, because it's already a very expensive venture. Now, climate change is real. Okay, we're seeing it, we're feeling it, in terms of what's happening around us. But in terms of in the vineyards, what's happening is that there is a lot more heat around than the grapes are used to, and there's some grapes that really don't need as much heat. Okay, so what's happening is that you find the harvest coming in earlier, and they're having to get creative with their production in order to compensate for some of the things that if you're not able to keep it in vineyard for the period of time that you need to.
Yeah.
So the grapes have a growing season. So somewhere around February, the buds come out, and it's very pretty on the vines, and then those flowers turn into little grapes. And somewhere in sort of Mayish, and then over the summer they ripen. And grapes need a slow, relatively long ripening period, because that's what helps them to develop the intensity and complexity, and concentrate the flavors. And so what you're seeing is that the heat is allowing that ripening to happen faster, and that's not what you want. So wine countries fall 30 to 50 degrees north of the equator, which is where you find Canada, USA. In the middle there, it's Europe, and then to the right, it's parts of India and China, and Hungary, and all those other countries. And then 30 to 50 degrees south of the equator, where we find Chile, Argentina, and then you have Mexico, Brazil, and all the other countries, Paraguay, and so on, making wines. And then we have in the middle South Africa making incredible wines. Oh my gosh, remember that one we had?
Oh God, that was so
that pinotage on
good.
Saturday has me
I know, I'm
all
still
over the place.
Still tasting it.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And then we have to the right we have New Zealand, Australia. And so what they found is that the climatic conditions in those areas within that belt are the best climatic conditions for growing grapes that are able to develop the level of ripeness and complexity that one needs to make wine. So countries that fall outside of that don't do so well. We are way too close to the equator. As you know, our residual heat hangs around for way too long. We don't have enough cool time.
Okay.
So our grapes will ripen. We can ripen grapes, but they're just not going to develop
that flavor
that we need.
Okay, so we are Nyam and Trod.
Yes.
So what have been your best trods? Not necessarily wine trods, but I know you're a fellow traveler like me. What have been some of your best trods in the world?
Oh my gosh. There are lots. Can I tell you? I mean, I live to eat and eat to live, and drink wine, of course. I mean, wine is such an integral part of who I am and what I do. But I remember that meal that we had at Viet. It was so there's just something about eating with friends,
right,
that takes the most ordinary thing. I mean, how many Friday nights have we been at a friend's house and just whipped up bully beef and rice? Okay, like the most one of the most loved or most hated
Right?
things, right?
Yes,
But it's
yes.
like comfort and it's so easy.
Yes.
But we gourmet it up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Take your hand like fashion.
Yes, ma'am, we gourmet it up
Right.
and we then just, roll out a wicked bottle of
Right.
Prosecco or a nice Pinot Noir
Exactly.
and it's a meal and
Exactly.
it's memorable. So for me, Tuscany last year, we spent a week in Tuscany, a house, 16 of us in a house. And let me tell you, it was
I love that
amazing.
region. I did amazing cooking classes
Oh
there.
my gosh. And just how, everything was fresh. Like they went
Yes.
to get the meat that morning and they would go and get the herbs from the garden. And, one of them, she brought wine that she made at home. And I mean, and 16 of us telling stories at a dinner table and we did that every night. So every day we do what we wanted to do, but then we would, at night have dinner together.
Yes.
But the other thing is, some of my most memorable meals have been here
Yes.
because we have. When I tell you we have talent here,
Oh my, amazing.
and what we have here that I think we don't realize is that our food has layers and depth and complexity. So I've been to 5-star restaurants and you have to book way in advance and you get there and you sit down and you're like, did something just happen?
Yeah, I know.
So for me, what I find is that the emphasis in these restaurants is really on presentation.
Definitely, that's something that our chefs are beginning to
Oh my
learn.
gosh,
They're
yes.
getting. I'm so proud of them.
Yes.
Before it used to be kind of one-dimensional,
Correct.
but now you have some young chefs
Yes.
coming up, and my heart swells with
Yes.
joy to see how
Yes.
they're taking this artistic
Yes.
push. So of course, you're having a drink and a natter
Of
with your
course.
Jack
Bring it on.
Sprats.
Yes. Bring
Right.
it
So my
on.
friends call me Jack Sprat, guys, and of course, Deborah has access to wines all the time. So we spoke about regions, and in France, Sweden, etc. They have schnapps, they have eau de
Yes, they
vie,
do.
etc. So
Yes, they do.
I have this lovely poire,
Oh,
vie, eau de vie, which
Yes.
is water of life,
Yes.
that I brought back from my last trip to France, which is my second home.
Yes.
And I wanted to, it's still quite early morning, but we've had to have a drink.
Agreed.
You spoke about your friends in Tuscany picking herbs from their garden. I
Yes.
picked this rosemary from my garden.
Lovely.
So basically, I have a dry white
Yes.
wine, which I've added some eau de vie, the poire.
Yes.
In France, it's poire William. Typically, is that grape. Grapes on my mind after this wine chat. And I haven't had a sip of a drink yet.
I know.
And also I've got some Fever Tree tonic water. Thanks you guys at Select Brands for being
You're
so kind to
welcome.
me to provide some beverages. So I've got, so I'm making us a little pear spritz.
Ooh.
I figure something light, but I didn't want
For
to
the
do
morning,
mimosas
absolutely.
for the morning.
No,
So
mimosas are
yes,
done.
they're passé.
Yes.
Right? So I just want to do something light, herbal, refreshing. I just thought, usually people think, pear and mint, but I think pear and rosemary go very, very well. And I know yours is a palate
Yes.
that appreciates everything,
Yes, ma'am. I'm excited.
So I'm just
I've
going to...
not had a cocktail like
Right,
this
so
before.
guys, beside us, so we have these 2 wine glasses that I've put the Poire William and some dry white wine. So any dry white wine that you have, you can put, because the pear will be sweet.
Okay.
So you hear those ice drops. I'm putting ice in her glass right now in my
I
glass.
love that sound.
Yes, there's nothing that beats that. And especially in a humid country
Yes.
like our little island Jamaica, we need a lot. We go through plenty ice.
Yes, we do.
And this is a nice light drink for your friends who, you don't want nothing too strong, but you want a little buzz.
Yes.
And it's nice and light and pleasant to drink. And I've got some Fever Tree tonic here that I'm going to open up. Ooh, you hear that?
Yes.
And I love something like, you could also use soda water if you
Thank
want as well. Pear and ginger go very nicely as well.
Oh, this is adorable.
So this is a nice, light and simple drink. So
Cheers.
thank you for having a drink and a natter with me, Deborah.
Cheers, Jax. It's
You
been
know,
my pleasure.
And you'll see more of Deborah. Deborah has contributed to Nam and Trod. She's written a lovely article for us about pairing wine with vegetarian meals. And you'll see more of Deborah in my food videos as well. She never leaves me out.
No, I will never leave you out. Cheers to friendship.
Cheers.
And to this
Right,
yamming and
let's
trolling
join in
together.
Right, always. So, where we going next? Argentina or California? Once this pandemic is over, we know.
Argentina is
And
easier.
yes, we have to make that wine trip.
Agreed.
Okay.
Let's do
Cheers.
it.
Thank you.